Welcome to The More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton along with Greg Matusek. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Kevin. I just want to say this is probably the first time in like 20 years that I'm glad I'm not at Lollapalooza. I think the only place I'd rather be less than Lollapalooza is probably like Ron DeSanto's dinner or something like that. I think that's probably the only more dangerous place in the country.
Yes, it's hard to believe that they're doing stuff like that. Ward Anderson is off tonight, but we do have a very interesting guest, Cailet Kovach. Did I pronounce that right, Cailet?
You actually did.
And we're going to be calling her Callie because that's what her friends, and we like to think that we're her friends, call her. And Callie is the host of a great podcast called The Dead Don't Lie. So, Callie, why don't you tell us a little bit about the podcast, why you chose that topic, and a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. So I chose The Dead Don't Lie because it's a true crime podcast, generally going over murder. But I've done a couple bonus episodes, including the Miami condo collapse, which I actually went and visited while I was on vacation.
Yeah, I saw that.
But I've just always been fascinated with murder, especially the forensic side. So like currently I'm working on a listener request, which is the John Wayne Gacy case, but I'm also working on a very forensic heavy case called Darlie Routier. So once I get those released, it'll be really exciting, and I'm super excited to get them out.
And how did you get interested in that area?
It's more the science part. Like I said, I really love forensics, so when something like a murder happens, there's a story. And it doesn't matter what anybody tries to say, there's a story that you cannot refute.
Interesting. So are you like a fan of the CSI kind of television shows?
Kind of. I actually prefer stuff like Forensic Files because it's based on real cases. But I did like CSI and stuff when I was a little bit younger.
Okay.
Nice.
Very good. Very good.
I will look for it. And it's on all like podcast platforms. Are there any ones that we should look for it on?
No, you could definitely find it on, especially Spotify, but I think it's on 6 different platforms. It's still very new, though. I only have a couple episodes out.
Oh, but that's nice that we're getting in on the ground floor. It's
you are.
That's what I always look for in a pyramid scheme. Yeah. So we're trendsetters. We're influencers here. That's nice.
There you go. Invest early. Get in, like you said, on the ground floor. So we wanted to start tonight with the topic that I think is the feel-good topic for most people of the week. Yeah. Not everybody, but for most people, which is the Olympics. I happen to be actually watching them right now as we speak. Some gymnastics going on. But I guess we can't avoid this story about Simone Biles dropping out. Is she now out completely, or is there still a chance that she might compete in 1 or 2 events?
She's out completely.
Okay. And Greg, I know that you joined all the right-wing pundits in criticizing her excessively.
Not at all, actually. I thought that was the best decision for her. I think we're to the point now where we should trust athletes for their mental health and their physical state, and especially for someone like Simone Biles, who has proven herself a champion numerous times. But, like you said, the right-wing punditry came after her hard. Like, somehow this American champion is somehow not American enough.
Oh, they called her a sociopath.
Yeah.
They called her weak.
Yeah.
They said things like, what if Michael Jordan had decided not to play in the 7th game of the NBA Finals? None of that, of course, makes any sense. But I guess what I'm wondering is why? Why is the right wing deciding to attack this woman who personifies a lot of the best of America, no matter who you are? And the Olympics are generally nonpartisan. Why are they turning it into a partisan hit job?
I am going to say, I think a big thing of it is because it's not a physical injury. A lot of times, like, I was raised with a very right-winged family, and it was, you work as hard as you can, you keep going, and you keep going no matter if you're broken or not. It doesn't matter. You just keep going. And the fact that she's stepping back and saying, this is better for me, that's why I feel like they're attacking her, because they're like, well, this isn't best for us. But that doesn't matter. She needs to do what's best for her.
Right.
She's also past retirement age. Like, she is a little bit
Yeah.
older than what they generally are by the time that they retire.
Certainly, like you said, on the older side for that sport, and has accomplished so much. You know, if you have a pitcher and they're supposed to start game 2 of the World Series, and they get into the bullpen before the game and they realize for whatever reason they're just not throwing right today, you want them to go to the coach and say, maybe I shouldn't start. Maybe I shouldn't be in this game just yet. You know, I'm of two minds about what she did because I understand the idea that it's a team sport. The U.S. Olympic Committee invested a lot of money in her. Maybe someone missed a spot on the Olympic team because she took that spot. But she also did make room for other athletes to compete and maybe cleared the field for them to achieve their goals and their gold.
Well, another big thing is she actually, like, part of her mental struggles were manifesting as physical. She was actually struggling to realize where she was in the air, and she was having problems landing. And if you've seen her perform, she has incredible power. If she doesn't land that, that's a horrible injury for her. So the fact that, you know, she was manifesting physical complications.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And even if it's 70% mental and 30% physical, and I totally agree with what you just said, Cailet, she also has the right to think, I've been literally a gold medal Olympian for, 8 years now. Why risk going out with a really embarrassing fall or a really embarrassing routine that denigrates her reputation, her memory? There's no reason to do that.
Well, why, even if it was 99% mental and 1% physical, I mean, we saw Carrie Shrug. We all remember the Carrie Shrug. Carrie Shrug had to retire at age 18 because she could no longer do gymnastics anymore. No, she did the right thing. She knew her body better than anyone else. So, you know, and additionally, I know lots of people who have mental health days at their job. You know,
yes.
Hey, I don't think I can handle this because of the stress, and I think I need a mental health day. And
that is just as real.
Just as real. And they go, oh, okay, well, I think you're going to take the day off. Make sure that Bob has your paperwork. Do you have anything that needs to be done? You know, let Susan know it and move on. Go home.
Right.
You know, awesome.
So we're all of a like mind on this particular topic. Now, one other aspect of it, and I know that, Greg, you wanted to talk to this, was on the Instagram account of comedian Michael Che, who was, of course, the star of Saturday Night Live, there were some really questionable, if not outright tasteless jokes posted about Simone Biles this week. But Michael Che claims that he didn't post them, that his account was hacked. Greg, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so he got a lot of pushback, like, quickly. Like, you know, that's not funny. He made some sexual abuse jokes.
Yes.
You know, and we've had this discussion with you being a comedian, a comedy writer, with Ward being a comedian and whatnot. And, like, where is the line? Is there ever a line? And Michael Che eventually came back with, looks like my Instagram was hacked because all I ever do is make fun of white people. And it even seemed like that was a joke. Like, it was never an apology. He was just he wasn't saying like he was sorry. He was just saying like, forget it. I'm going to pretend like this was hacked and I'm not going to say anything else about it. So no, I don't think his Instagram was hacked. I think he was just pretending like it was hacked and trying to move on.
I will note, he made that post where he said it was hacked with the same font and background as his previous post.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know you could tell that from Instagram, but okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's, I think he's trying to be funny with that too, which,
okay.
It's not, I usually enjoy Michael Che's humor, and I think there is a line. You know what I mean? There are some things that aren't funny. You know, sexual abuse of teenage girls isn't that funny ever. You know?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Like you said, we have touched on this before. You know, I tend to fall towards there being no line and you just let the chips fall where they may. However, I have to say that when I read the text that he purportedly sent and probably sent, they did bother me too. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, the big thing is a lot of it was stuff sent in by fans via private message. So,
right.
Stuff that crossed the line, he could have not shared it. He could have literally kept that private, but he chose to share those.
Well, that's a question too, was it really stuff sent in by fans, or was that another gimmick that he was doing? Like, I'm getting a lot of stuff here. Here's what Al from Minnesota is saying, and here's what Bill from such and such is saying, to kind of, just like I was hacked, like, this isn't really me, or this is someone else who's really saying this.
Well, there's the age-old trick of quoting someone else and then not taking responsibility for the fact that you put that thought out there because you quoted it.
Right. Donald Trump, one of my favorite Donald Trump isms. And it's one of my favorite things that he does because it's so funny. He goes, I hear that you're, and
people are saying,
I hear people are saying that you're having sex with a goat. Now, I'm not saying it. I'm just saying people are saying it, and there's questions going around, and I'm just saying I think that this should be looked into, and I'm not saying it. I wouldn't say it, but people are saying you, a goat, and a hotel room. But I would never say that in front of this podium. So I think that's what Michael Che was doing, except without the goat and the sex.
So let me ask both of you this, and I'm going to start with you, Callie. There was a comedian, I don't remember his name, Greg might, who had been hired by SNL about a year or two ago, but before he even started the job, it was discovered that he had a long time ago posted some really tasteless jokes. I think they were homophobic jokes, I'm not sure. Or they may have been racist, I don't recall. But this comedian had been hired and then was essentially fired from the job before he even started because of these tweets. Okay, Michael Che, if he did in fact write this, it's recent, it's not a long time ago, but he's also already a star on the show. Should he be held to the same standard?
Well, Michael Che's the head writer.
Yeah, but nobody cares whether Michael Che keeps his writing job. The question is it fair for one young man to be essentially fired from the job for old tweets and Michael Che to be given a pass for very, very current Instagram posts just because he's a star already?
So I'll try to make this not long-winded. Regarding old tweets, if the person still believes in those and still has those same values, it makes sense that they were fired. Michael hasn't apologized. He hasn't shown any remorse. He's, continued on oh, this wasn't my fault, blah, blah. Why should he keep his job when that's very offensive? And it's not with the times. If you're someone who's in the public eye in today's day and age, you have to be careful what you say. Why should he be able to get away with that?
Right, and we might as well take a moment now to acknowledge what should be obvious, which is that one of us has a little boy or a little girl around. Anybody want to take responsibility for him or her?
Yeah, that's my daughter in the background. She's having a great time.
Oh, that's awesome.
What's her name?
Rosalie, and she's almost 2 years old.
Well, welcome, Rosalie. We are thrilled to have you on the podcast as well. So let's talk a little bit about COVID, which is, of course, everybody knows, surging in Florida and several other states. But I read this yesterday, up to 1/5 of all new COVID cases are just in that one state of Florida. So, with that in mind, first of all, we know that everybody should get vaccinated, but they're hesitating. But is it time for the government to come out and forcefully acknowledge and admit that a booster shot, a third shot, will likely be required, and to start dealing with how to get them to the public? Because right now what I see is a lot of pussyfooting around. Pfizer said they believe a booster is necessary. Moderna is testing boosters, but is leaning in that direction. But the CDC is still kind of hesitating. And I'm a little concerned about this nebulous area. So what do you think about boosters?
No, I think I said the government's first priority should be getting everyone vaccinated, especially for young people who can't get vaccinated. In Ohio, they're offering $100 right now. If you are unvaccinated and you still haven't gotten the clue, here's $100. Go get vaccinated. Which I want to know, where's my $100? Because I was one of the first people to get vaccinated.
Right. No, it doesn't work that way.
And that's fine. I would give my $100 away at this point.
Cailet, what about you? What do you think on the booster issue?
So I agree that we should be trying harder and working harder to get everybody vaccinated. But also I was doing some studying, and there are studies, mostly of the Pfizer, that shows that there is a waning immunity. So it can drop from 97% to as low as 86%, which is still much better than 0, but it is dropping. So from what I read, you need a booster no later than 8 months after your second shot. But it should be a priority to get those first two to begin with.
Right. So I think, again, we're all in agreement. We all believe in the vaccine. We all think it's a public health issue, and that there's no real good reason, unless you have a specific medical issue, there's no good reason not to get your first and second doses, or if it's Johnson & Johnson, your first dose. I stand a little apart from you guys on the booster. My suspicion, and again, obvious caveat, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but we've all been following how these statistics kind of play out over time. And I think as more and more people start to hit the 5-month, the 6-month, the 8-month mark on their original vaccines, you're going to see those percentages of people who are getting COVID in a breakthrough case. I think you're going to see those numbers go as they did from 90 down to the 80s. And frankly, I think it's going to go into the 70s and maybe below that, because I just think as more people are exposed to the Delta variant with less and less protection from their original immunity, I think you're going to see more and more serious cases, more stories about those. So I think that the CDC and the Biden administration should get ahead of this and not wait for a second crisis to hit. I think that they should get the FDA to approve, again, on their interim approval, because they haven't formally approved the vaccines yet. But on a fast track approval, I think that they should approve the booster shots and start making a plan for distributing them. That's my opinion. Take of what it is.
I will say one thing. So this reminds me quite a bit of the game Plague. I don't know if you guys ever played that. It's literally like you're a virus or something and you try to take over the world. It's literally what's happening. The more people, that keep getting COVID, the longer this is prolonged. That's why we have more variants now that actually are causing problems. So the longer this goes on, we're going to need more shots, essentially, because it's going to continue to change. And then the original doses that were catered to the original COVID are no longer going to work.
Right. Yeah. I agree. Now, Greg, you also had some opinions about the Pentagon going ahead with its quasi-mandatory vaccine program. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the federal program that's a quasi-mandate, in that you either have to get the vaccine or you have to submit to weekly COVID tests.
Right, but the people who have to submit to weekly COVID tests have to it's for religious exemptions or for health exemptions.
Right.
So the thing about the military is when you sign up for the military, you get like 17 or 18 vaccines, period. And if you say, well, I have a health exemption, you know what they say? Great, you're not in the military anymore. You don't deserve to be in the military. Because a lot of these vaccines that they give you, which they give you 17 or 18 vaccines at once and you feel terrible, are like radiation vaccines or who knows, chemical vaccines. They give you all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, the idea of individual choice and the military, the U.S. military,
right,
those are kind of contradictory premises.
So I've heard people like, well, there's going to be a lot of people who quit the military. Yeah. The thing is, you can't just quit. Well, you cannot re-up. That's fine. That's an option. But if your re-update is like 2 or 3 years away or 6 months away, you are getting the vaccine. So It's fascinating that supposedly there's 40% of the military that has said we will not take the vaccine. Guess what? It's now going to be 40% that will take the vaccine.
You mean that additional 40%?
That additional will take it.
Okay, but I'm just going to say I disagree, Greg. I think this is going to become a civil liberties issue, and I think that the pushback is not going to end. Kaylee, what about you?
So my husband has a friend who's in the Guard, and we told him, like, if you're going to come visit us, because I have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, you have to get your COVID vaccine. Like, period, end of story. And he went on and on about how he didn't want it. The military was giving him a choice right now. He doesn't have to get it. And it's like, no, like, you're going to get it or you're not coming to visit. And now that they're talking about making it a military, mandatory thing, it's like, well, he's actually got it now. So he's ahead of the game, but he absolutely did not want to get it.
Yeah, that is funny. And I do know a couple of families in my area where, a daughter who had grandkids that the grandfather wanted to see, they kind of laid down the law. They said, Pop, if you want to come visit or you want us to come visit you, you're getting that vaccine. Because otherwise the kids are not going to be in the same room with you.
Well, you have to. You have to set down those rules. Because my son was born with breathing issues, and COVID is a very respiratory thing. I'm not about to bring that near him.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Yeah, so Kevin, you had said like there could be some civil liberty issues and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't happen in the military. I mean,
I'm just making a prediction. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a scientist. I'm just Kevin Kelton, and I'm telling you that 40% is not going to just lay down and get the shot.
Oh no,
some
no,
of them
no.
will. Some of them will, but not all.
They will stand there and they will salute, and then they will sit down. They will probably sit down and they will probably be all pissed off about it, and they will probably be like, "Oh man, I should do something," and they'll still do it, because that's how it is.
Well, okay.
I will. I could be wrong.
We'll see.
But that's.
One federal judge just rules that the military doesn't have that right, and you've got a test case. So,
well, we'll see. Yeah. Well, so far, all the federal judges have been pretty cool about this, and I said this weeks ago about how this once the word global pandemic enters our vernacular, like our everyday vernacular, like certain rights, like, oh, well, I don't really feel like taking medicine. That should be thrown out the window.
I just found out this week, there was a case in the Supreme Court in around 1903 that was about the smallpox vaccine, and the court ruled in no uncertain terms that the public right to protection outweighed the individual right to make choices for their own body. They absolutely ruled in that. So if this ever got to the Supreme Court, they would have to reverse precedent to go against that kind of mentality.
Well, think about all of the vaccines and stuff that students have to have in order to attend public school.
Right.
Well, once again, there's with public schools, you can literally just say, we our guest last week was talking about, you can just say health exemption, religious exemption, things like that. So yeah, you would probably be surprised at how many kids at your school don't actually have vaccines. So that's another thing that will keep you parents awake at night. Sorry.
Oh, the things that keep me awake at night.
Oh, goodness, me too.
I always like to ask this. I'm going off script here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I always like to ask this of people. What is the last thing you think about when you put your head down at night, say goodnight to your wife or your husband, and close your eyes? Now, obviously, it's not going to be the same thing every night. But what is the last thing you tend to think about?
What I want to eat the next day. Not going to lie.
Great answer. Great answer. I love it.
If it's a work day, sometimes I'll go through my work schedule, but that tends to keep me up. Like I'll say, okay, I've got a 9:30, and then I've got an 11:30. That's my work voice in my head. I've got a 12 o'clock. I hate that. Otherwise, I do go through. Oftentimes, I go through movie scenes. Like, oh, that was a really cool movie scenes. But then when it's time to go to bed, white room. Go to the corner of the white room, and then there's a small door, and there's another white room. Go to the corner. There's a small door, another white room, small door, another white room, and I do that until
I've never heard of that one before. It's like counting sheep. I love it.
It's the most boring thing I could ever think of. But it's a visualization thing that makes me fall asleep within seconds. My wife hates it. I don't say it out loud.
So you visualize walking through a series of very bland white rooms?
Yes. And I don't say it out loud. I don't say, white room, small door, white room, small door. I don't say it out loud because then my wife would really kill me. But I fall asleep.
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah, but I fall asleep pretty quickly. And I snore. Ladies, I am a catch.
So, coming back now, let's talk a little bit about what's happening with the infrastructure bill. The senators of the U.S. Senate started debate this week. They got 67 votes to open up debate. That's obviously a lot more than is needed for cloture. So it looks promising. Greg, do you think that we're going to have an infrastructure bill by the end of the week?
Yeah, and they're supposed to be on vacation, which, we're going to start my campaign soon to become a senator because these guys go on a lot of vacation, a lot more than I go on. But they're supposed to be on vacation for several weeks, I believe. And actually, the U.S. House of Representatives, they're on a 24-hour recall. So at any point, they could be called back to vote on this. So we are expecting Wednesday this will all be voted on. It's about a $1 trillion infrastructure bill. It is a lot less than the original Biden $2.5 trillion one. But, I'll take it.
But $1 trillion is nothing to sneeze at. That will be maybe the largest, well, aside from, I think, the COVID relief packages, that would be, I think, the largest bill that any Congress has ever approved. So, I think that that's quite an achievement, both for the Biden administration and for the U.S. Congress. And then we still have to look forward to the Democrats' follow-up bill, which is the human infrastructure bill. I forget what they're calling it, which is supposed to be, up to $3.5 trillion.
That might be even more than that. But the nice thing about this is, the Biden administration needed something to show, like a big bill like this. They had talked infrastructure. But the thing is, the Trump administration had said that was going to be their thing, and they never did anything with it. They never even got a bill introduced.
Every week was infrastructure week, and they never did anything.
Right. If they could get something done within the first year, it would be huge. Trump has already gone on record that he would actively support any candidate who primaries against any Republican senator who supports this bill. And so that has some Republicans scared, and some Republicans are like, look, we have to get something done. And it's not a bad bill. There is some good things, but it's not $2.5 trillion.
I don't know if you ever realize this, but every president comes into office, and in the first year to 2 years of their presidency, they have a singular major achievement of some kind. Usually, it's some piece of legislation that they signed. With Democrats, it's always a spending bill that somehow looks to solve certain economic problems in the American marketplace. With Republicans, it's always a tax cut. It's always a tax cut. They don't try to do anything else in their first year except cut taxes. You had the Bush tax cuts, you had the Trump tax cuts, but Johnson had civil rights. Obama had the relief plan. Biden is going to have this.
Kennedy invaded the Bay of Pigs. Oh shit!
Yeah, well,
we're not supposed to talk about that. Oh damn!
That was trying to fix Cuban infrastructure.
Oh yeah,
it didn't work so well. Yeah.
Well, people like the idea that there's going to be more money in their pockets.
Right, but it's always a question of how to get it. Republicans always say we're cutting taxes, which would be great if they actually cut taxes for the working class. But as we know, the working class gets some crumbs, and the rich always get the bulk of the tax cuts.
Right. What did Reagan do? I mean, besides
Tax cuts, 1982.
I thought it was just supporting apartheid.
Yeah, no, 1982 and 86, big tax cuts.
Supporting apartheid, introducing crack to inner cities, withholding aid support. It stopped me when I
Building up the Taliban.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm pretty sure he did all those things, but Saint Reagan,
Yes. Let's see. Elsewhere in the news. Oh, so the Arizona election audit seems to have petered out in a whimper. They've stopped the recounting now and apparently are working on their, and I'm putting this in air quotes, report on what they found.
I heard it was because they ran out of aluminum for their tinfoil hats.
Oh, dear.
And so we won't know for another month or two what they're going to put in that report, whether they're going to claim that they found widespread corruption or whether they're going to just put out a report that somehow whitewashes the whole thing. Yeah, that's going to be fun.
No, it's the night before. They're going to say something like, "My dog ate the report." It's going to be ridiculous.
But in the meantime, I don't know whether you read this. They're talking to people around Trump, and they say he and the people in his ear really believe that he is going to become president again before 2024. That somehow he is going to be reinstated. There is no constitutional mechanism for this, but they somehow believe that Joe Biden is either going to resign, die, or be impeached, and that therefore Trump will become the de facto president.
So that's the part that kind of scares me, is that there is, even if there's a small contingency, and let's not even use the word contingency, let's use the word cabal, okay, of people who think that if Joe Biden dies, Trump becomes president. Okay. I mean, seriously. And that's the part that, okay. And when I say scare, I mean terrifies me, because we have these radical people who are not smart enough to actually read the Constitution that they swear that they will die for.
Allegiance to, yes.
Yeah. That, they don't understand that Kamala Harris will become president. And even if something horrible, Lord forbid, happens to her, Nancy Pelosi becomes president. And if something happens to her, Lord forbid, okay, there's another whole group of people who become president before. And it's not Kevin McCarthy. Okay?
Well, there's also movies out there that go over that, like White House Down, Olympus Has Fallen. Like, why would they possibly think Trump was going to be next?
Does Gerard Butler become president in any of those?
I don't think so.
Damn it. He'd be a great...
You know who would be great if they became president?
Who?
Scarlett Johansson.
I think so.
She would make a great president.
I think
I would vote for her.
I would watch that Disney movie, but only if it's streaming, not if it comes out in the theaters.
Wait a second. You went to a theater this week. Don't talk to me about that.
I did. I went to my first movie last night. Jessica and I went to a movie in Round Rock, Texas. We saw the movie Stillwater with Matt Damon. We didn't see it with Matt Damon. He happened to be in it.
I was going to say.
We just went on our own.
Look at you.
I'll tell you something. I had some problems with the movie, but the experience was great because we love going to movies. Cailet, what about you and your husband? Is that something that you guys get a particular kick out of?
So one of our routines is always any Marvel movie that comes out, we watch it in theaters. And when we were on vacation, we actually watched Black Widow in the theaters outside of Universal Studios.
Oh, look at you. Matt Damon, so I'll try to tie this all together. Matt Damon actually just released a quote that said that kids of this generation will not have that same shared experience of movie watching that we do and that same appreciation. Seeing a movie in a theater to me is, I don't want to say going to church because we all know it's better than going to church. It's much more fun.
Not selling popcorn and hot dogs at the church.
and the smell and everything. And it's such a great experience and it means so much. And now, for kids, now it's like, this is 2 hours without their phone. My kids watch movies now with their phone. And I always say, put your phones down. This is the most important film in the world. And they're like, I don't think I can do that.
Well, and we make fun of it almost every week that I happen to be significantly older than the rest of my cohorts here. And yet, call me old man, make jokes about get off my backyard. I don't think movies are going away. I respectfully disagree with Matt Damon. I've been through too many eras where they said this is the end of the movie business, the movie industry. Obviously, they said that when television came into being. They said it again when cable came. They said it again after 9/11. I don't think movies are going away. I think people will start to go back to theaters, and you'll see packed theaters on the weekends. And I just think that art form is too ingrained in the American and the international experience to just peter away.
You were still a pretty young man when they added sound to movies, right? I mean,
yeah, I was about 2 or 3. Yeah. I actually, when I was 3 years old, used to play the piano in my local movie
in your
house.
theater. You were yeah. I was just wondering.
I will say, I think with the streaming services being so readily available for everybody that maybe movies won't go away, but I think they're definitely going to slow down. And we did see that with Black Widow.
Right. I think it was one of the first Marvel movies, because nerd. Marvel movies that I did not see in the theater. I'm trying to think about that. Yeah, and that's actually the heart of the Scarlett Johansson topic that you were trying to bring up that I sighed.
Yes.
That I pushed it. Sorry about that. Go on.
No, that's what I was trying to do, is segue to that. So let's talk about it. Scarlett Johansson, who is married to Michael Che's on-camera partner, Colin Jost. She is suing Disney over the streaming release of her latest film. Greg, you know more about this than I do. Why is this an important story?
So the way her contract read was that she would have exclusive theatrical release for Black Widow. And that meant more money for her. Well, of course it did not. It got some theatrical release, and it did stream through the Disney Plus streaming service, which was awesome. But that meant less money for her, in her opinion. Disney fired back that they not only released how much she got paid, but thought that she had a callous disregard for COVID protocols. Which I don't think was really fair. There probably should have been a renegotiation. Personally, I think she should sue. She's brought Disney like billions of dollars. She's the only character who's been in all the Captain America universe films, the Thor and the Iron Man and the Avengers. So yeah, she should sue.
Well, it's a total of 9 movies.
Yeah.
Well, explain that. I'm sorry.
Well, she was in a total of 9 movies, and I think for her, it's not so much that she's suing about the money part. Yes, that's like what's happening, but I think it's more the fact that they breached contract, which is a big deal. Like, contracts are put into place to have those set boundaries, and they breached it.
Yeah, and they will settle, and she will essentially win. She'll get her $20 or $30 or $40 million settlement, and Disney will be happy to pay it, because that's about 2 hours worth of revenue for them.
But it is going to set a precedent for future movies, because with the streaming services that we have now, and the fact that Disney decided to release it at the same time as the theatrical release, they're going to have to integrate that into their contract systems from now on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, do you remember when the writer's strike? Kevin probably remembers this a little bit. The writer's strike a couple of years. Well, how long ago was that? 10 years ago?
Well, there have been a number of them starting in 1981. That's the first one that I was involved with. There may have been writer strikes before that. I think there was famously one in 1961. I've been through 4 or 5 of them just in my career. Yeah.
The last one where they were trying to renegotiate online content.
Yes, right.
And I think they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to renegotiate again for streaming services.
Absolutely.
And this is why we have unions, and this is why unions are awesome. And I'm kind of hoping SAG-AFTRA will sponsor our podcast. So
every week you go fishing for a new sponsor.
I do.
Nobody has ever taken us up on it.
I know. Well, I was working on Mountain Dew for a while, but it was just really not our demographic. Listen to politics and do the do. But no. What are you gonna do?
Okay, so I want to end on, there's some other things in the news, but we don't need to cover them. They've been covered in the traditional media. But there was a story that I read about this weekend that I find kind of interesting, which is about one of our favorite topics, Hunter Biden.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Who hasn't really been in the news much since his father became president. But a new scandal is blooming or flourishing around him, because apparently Hunter Biden is an artist, or so he believes himself to be. And I'm making no judgment on it. I've never seen any of his artwork. And he has booked a New York City gallery to show his artwork. And they're going to have a big kind of unveiling gallery showing of about a dozen of his pieces of art. And people are saying that this is proof of the Biden administration's corruption, because the estimated price for these pieces is anywhere on the low end from $75,000 that it will sell for to, they think he might even get up to $500,000 for one or two pieces. And they're saying this is the way for big money donors to get dark money to the Biden administration in return for favoritism. So they asked Hunter Biden what he thinks about this, and he essentially said, if that's what people think, and he used the F word, he said, F them. So with that in mind, Greg, I'll start with you. Do you think that this is a form of high-level corruption in government, or are people just making another kerfuffle over Hunter Biden?
We have to go way, way, way back. Your first statement was, Hunter Biden's never in the news. But so my concern...
I said hasn't been in the news much since the inauguration.
No, see, this is the thing. My conservative friends and family, that's all they talk about. And they say, did you see Hunter Biden now? Did you see? And that's all they talk about. And if you watch Fox or if you watch Newsmax or OAN, he's literally their lead story every night. And it's fascinating that those of us on the left or center even, we don't see him. We don't care. He's not like our Prince or our Ivanka or Jared. We just never hear about him. But over there they have a Hunter watch. And I wish I was kidding, but they honestly think like this is where Joe Biden's going down. This is going to be their smoking blunt. This is Hillary's emails. And I'm like, I've never heard of any of this. And they're like, because you watch CNN. And I'm like, sure. So there's that. He is in the news every day, I promise you. Two, he himself doesn't fancy himself. He is shocked by this too. Someone approached him and said, hey, we see that you have some art. His art is terrible. His art is horrible. And I say that as someone who has been to a museum, who's been to a lot of museums and not an art critic, but it's terrible. I'll let someone else talk first and go on to as far as conspiracy theories, which I have a lot more.
Caitlin, any thoughts on that?
I'll just say one thing. A lot of people, in regards to like art, they'll buy, or items, anything, they'll buy something if it has a name attached to it. I mean, think about it. All the people, oh, look at my Louis Vuitton purse, and stuff like that. Like, they'll buy it because it has a name attached to it. Going back to like my podcast, I'm working on John Wayne Gacy. After he was arrested while he was on death row, he was selling art. And people were buying it because it was like, oh, look, this serial killer, I have a piece of his art. And it was selling from anywhere from $200 to $2,000 for art that wasn't that great, but it had a name attached to it.
Yeah. And Greg, didn't you tell us that Sylvester Stallone also sold some art for some pricey numbers?
Oh, you can actually still buy it. You can buy Sylvester Stallone work for up to over $150,000. And it's bad too. Jim Carrey has many exhibits, and it's terrible too. There's a lot of art there. Joni Mitchell paints. Joni Mitchell is terrible. I mean, there's a lot of people who just because they're talented or just because they're rich, believe that they have talent in other areas. They don't. And I think that's okay, but people want it. Going back to your John Wayne Gacy, I said I wasn't going to tell the story, but I will. In my neighborhood, we have a serial killer memento store. And it sells artwork and it sells things from serial killers. So it's literally like a mile from my house, and it's got a lot of clown paintings from a lot of different serial killers, and they make a really good business. So yeah. No.
I have a friend. He was my roommate when I first moved out to Los Angeles. This is a comedian named John Pate, who used to go to celebrities' homes and convince them to let him put paint on their car tire and then drive over a canvas so he could get a painted imprint of their car tire. And then they would sign it. And he sold it as artwork. He never made big money for it, but he would sell this stuff and people would buy it. Tire tracks of the celebrities.
I would buy that, like, for my favorite celebrities. I think that's kind of different and cool enough. Yeah. I mean, if I could authenticate that, I think that's kind of a different, cool thing. Yeah.
Yep. So I want to, we're moving toward the end of the podcast, and I feel like I kind of short shrifted a little bit, Cailet, about your podcast. So again, I want you to mention the title, and maybe you could give us a teaser of one case that you're either currently researching or maybe you've already done a podcast about it, but one really interesting case that you think our audience might find fascinating.
Well, so my podcast is called The Dead Don't Lie. I currently solo host it. An interesting case that I'm working on is actually a listener request. I'm working on John Wayne Gacy. That's why I know a lot about him. I have like 20 pages of handwritten and typed notes for it. So I'm really excited to release that for everybody.
And what would be one tidbit that we'll learn in your podcast, or we're going to learn now, that most people might, even people that are in the know about John Wayne Gacy, might not have heard about?
A little tidbit. So I actually got this comment on my TikTok about John Wayne Gacy. Someone made the comment about how he is not very good at coming up with nicknames for stuff.
Uh-huh. So how would that...
some of his different techniques he had nicknames for.
So can you give us an example?
So one thing that he did, the way that he immobilized his victims, he called it the handcuff trick, which essentially was just tricking them into handcuffing themselves. That's all it was.
So a creative murderer, but not good with titles.
Not at all.
Not creative. See, he's good at one thing, but not everything. So
Exactly.
So, oh my goodness, that's.
And you talked about one case on the episode that I heard, and I forget the woman's name, but apparently this young woman who was very popular in her neighborhood and even was a babysitter or a child caregiver for a lot of her neighbors. And then they found out something very disconcerting about her. What was that? What was that case?
So I think you're talking about Megan Huntsman. So she was a mom, and a baby's body was found in her garage. And then after further investigation, there were actually a total of 7 babies found in her garage.
And these were all her children?
Yep, they were all her children. All of them she carried full term, gave birth to them, and then killed them right after having them.
And how did they make this discovery?
So, sadly, actually, one of her daughters, along with the rest of the family, were cleaning out the garage, and she's the one who found one of the babies.
Oh, my Lord. Well, anyways, there's a happy thought to end the podcast on, right, Greg? We're always looking for that upbeat closing.
Gee whiz.
That's not your fault, Caitlin.
No,
Sorry about that.
I just hope my wife never finds my old T-shirt collection and throws them out. Jeez, I swear I'm going to fit into them again someday. And but
my husband says the same thing about some of his old clothes.
Oh, I know. Well, but that's wow.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening. If you enjoy what we do here, please, tweet about us or post about us on your Facebook timeline and share our link so your friends can discover us as well. And if you like talking politics and stuff in the news, it doesn't have to be just about politics. Anything that suits your fancy that you'd like to discuss or debate or get a second opinion from other people, why don't you come to Open Fire Politics on Facebook? That's the name of our group there. And you can hang out with people like us and chat about whatever it is that's on your mind or comment on whatever it is they're chatting about. And with that, Cailet, I want to thank you. This has been fun having you on.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciate it.
Oh, great. So we're going to look for that podcast. It's called The Dead Don't Lie. It's on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, and all the fine places where podcasts are bought and sold. And Greg Matusak, what is the first week of August going to be like for you?
I watched a game on the Olympics called, I think, handball, but it wasn't like handball where you hit it against the wall. It was a group of guys playing like basketball, but they didn't dribble, and they just threw a ball to each other. And my week is going to be either to figure out how to play that or to start a team because it looks so dumb and so easy. I was like, no skill basketball? This is awesome. And you throw in the net.
I got to look for it.
You throw it into a giant like soccer net. Instead, I mean, this is like my game. I mean, oh my!
It's like soccer, except you carry the ball.
Yeah, it's like soccer. You carry the ball and then you throw it to each other. It's like a wiffle ball or something like that. I mean, it's made for like big guys like me. I mean, no talent, no skill. I mean, no finesse. I'm waiting for all the hate from the Handball League of America.
Right. Oh, they'll cancel you for sure.